The West Bank has become one of the most iconic and controversial pieces of real estate in the world. Widely portrayed as a land illegally stolen by Israel, the narrative of Israeli aggression is deeply ingrained in global consciousness. Many world leaders have spent countless hours and billions of dollars seeking a solution, one that often boils down to a simple yet flawed scheme. If Israel would just relinquish the land, expel the Jewish settlers, and create another Palestinian state, prosperity would surely follow. Yet, this narrative could not be more of a distortion of the truth. In fact, everything you know about this issue just might be a lie. Since Israel's conquest of Canaan in the times of Joshua, the West Bank, or Judea Samaria as it was originally known, has been Israel's heartland. This land, rich with Jewish history and spiritual significance, has been at the core of Israel's identity for millennia. From the ancient tabernacle at Shiloh, to the sacred sites of the first and second temples in Jerusalem, to Hebron, Shechem, Bethlehem, Jericho, and more, Judea and Samaria have always been the heart of Israel's religious and cultural life. When the Romans destroyed the temple in 70 AD, the Jewish people were exiled to the four corners of the earth, starting a dispersion that lasted for nearly 2,000 years. During those 2,000 years of exile, no other people group succeeded in establishing a lasting connection to the land of Israel. Judea and Samaria lay empty, barren, and desolate. At the beginning of the 20th century, however, something extraordinary began to happen. Slowly at first, then with growing force, the Jewish people began to return to their ancestral homeland. They drained the swamps, transformed barren landscapes into fertile ground, and set about rebuilding a nation that had been lost for centuries. Communities sprang up across the land, in the north and south, along the coastal regions of the east, and in the ancient heartland of Judea and Samaria, where the roots of their identity ran deep. In 1948, from the ashes of the Holocaust, the Jewish people were ready to declare a state. On May 14th, David Ben-Gurion stood before the world and proclaimed the birth of the State of Israel. Almost immediately, Egypt, Transjordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq declared war on the newly established state, sparking the start of the First Arab-Israeli War. Despite initial setbacks, Israel successfully repelled the invading Arab armies and gained control of territories originally designated for an Arab state by the UN. However, this victory came at a heavy price. The day before David Ben-Gurion declared independence, Judea and Samaria was lost to Israel. The invading Jordanian forces slaughtered 151 Jews, including 21 women, mostly after they had surrendered. On December 1st, 1948, King Abdullah declared the union of Transjordan with Judea and Samaria, which to them was west of the Jordan River. Although the annexation was only recognized by Great Britain and Pakistan, Judea and Samaria, the very heartland of Israel, was now in the hands of Jordan and was given the Jordanian name, the West Bank. For 19 long years, Jordan occupied the so-called West Bank until 1967, when Egypt, Syria, and Jordan all launched a coordinated attack on Israel. What followed became known as the Six-Day War, an astonishing military victory for Israel. Not only did Israel defend itself yet again from Arab aggression, but it also reclaimed the territories lost in 1948 and more, including Gaza, the Golan Heights, the Sinai Peninsula, and most significantly, Judea and Samaria. After 2,000 years of exile and 19 years of occupation, Israel's historic heartland was finally back in Jewish hands. 21 years later, Jordan officially renounced any claim they held to the West Bank and have now returned to its biblical status as Judea and Samaria, an integral part of the nation of Israel. Despite this historic reclamation, the familiar narrative persevered. The international community, driven by long-standing anti-Semitic sentiment, began mounting pressure on Israel to relinquish Judea and Samaria and create a Palestinian state. Despite the fact that surrendering this land would make Israel 9 miles wide at her narrowest point and thereby nearly indefensible to Arab aggression, despite the fact that Arabs already had 22 sovereign states and Palestinians already had a state of their own in the country of Jordan, Israel must sacrifice her most precious possession to create one more. As Israel's left-wing government wavered under international pressure, a new movement began to take shape. Israeli men, women, and children, harboring the same spirit as America's early pioneers, began to build communities in Judea and Samaria. They slept in cars, then tents, then mobile buildings, then fully built houses. Often the Israeli government evicted them and destroyed their homes, but they persevered. They faced cold, thirst, terrorism, financial ruin, and international pressure to rebuild their ancient homeland. One by one, towns and cities began to appear in highly significant biblical locations. And one by one, the Israeli government formally recognized these so-called settlements as legal Israeli communities. Soon, the brave men and women of Israel did what the Israeli government couldn't do. They turned the barren wastelands of Judea and Samaria into a flourishing Garden of Eden. What was once desolate and abandoned blossomed into vibrant, thriving communities. Neighborhoods, factories, schools, community centers, synagogues, and religious schools rose from the earth like an act of defiance against the forces that sought to erase the Jewish connection to this land. These pioneers worked tirelessly, building hundreds, then thousands of homes, breathing life into the very heart of Israel's ancient biblical heartland.
Good evening. The Middle East War produced development.
But despite the undeniable fact that the Jewish people were returning to their historic homeland, despite the fact that Jewish communities were being built only on open land, carefully avoiding private Arab property, the forces aligned against Israel were relentless. Both internally and internationally, Israel's enemies continued to contest every inch of this reclaimed territory. They waged a war of words and deeds, seeking to delegitimize the Jewish people's right to their ancient homeland. Over the years, Israel naively offered the Palestinians numerous opportunities for peace. On many occasions, Israel proposed giving up sections of Judea and Samaria as part of a two-state solution. In 2008, Israel's secular government went so far as to offer the Palestinians 93% of Judea and Samaria for the creation of a Palestinian state. The Palestinians refused. Israel signed the Oslo Accords, an agreement that let the Palestinians have a de facto state within a state, self-rule alongside of Israel. This kindness was answered with violence, resulting in wave after wave of terror attacks in Judea and Samaria and in Israel's larger cities of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Then Israel created a full-on Palestinian state in Gaza by expelling the 8,000 Jews who lived there and withdrawing security forces. But the Palestinians quickly turned this too into a staging ground for terror and war. Every concession Israel has given to the Palestinians has led to misery, suffering, and death for Israelis and Palestinians as well. The truth is undeniable. This conflict is not about land or statehood. It is about the very existence of Jews in their God-given homeland. As long as even one Jew lives and prospers in Israel, the so-called Palestinians will never rest. Their war is not against borders or policies. It is against the presence of Jewish people in the land of their ancestors. The relentless hatred and ceaseless attacks are a testament to this unyielding truth. Israel's right to exist, to live in peace, is the very thing they refuse to accept. The only viable path forward, the only hope for peace and security is for Israel to assert its sovereign rights over this land, hold out a hand of peace to Arabs who want to live in harmony, and maintain her defensive borders with lion-like ferocity, just as any nation would do to protect their own people. The land for peace illusion has been shattered. Giving up Judea and Samaria would leave Israel vulnerable, making her borders indefensible, and as we've seen in Gaza, would only lead to more violence and suffering for everyone involved. But there's something even deeper at stake here, something that transcends politics and borders. Israel doesn't have the right to surrender Judea and Samaria. This land was given to the Jewish people by God himself. And when God grants a gift, no human power, no amount of international pressure can strip that divine inheritance away. Judea and Samaria are not mere territories. They are the very soul of the Jewish people, their history, their faith, and their future. To abandon them is not just to give away land. It is to deny the essence of who they are. The Jewish people cannot and must not relinquish what God has promised them.